Alright, so I'm finally making a video on the iFlight Commando 8. I know there's been a few videos out already, and those have been on the prototype radio, which I also had, but didn't want to make a video on that because it's not a radio that you guys are going to be actually using. There wasn't a whole lot of changes between the prototype and this one. Mainly, the software went from OpenTX to EdgeTX. And they did do something with the hardware and the gimbals. They're a little bit smoother and not as much jitter as on the prototype. I don't notice anything else that is significantly different. The overall ergonomics of the radio, everything is the same as before. The architecture is the same as before, as far as I can tell. And I'm going to get into the architecture of this radio, which is quite a bit different from what Radio Master and Jumper are doing. So first off, before we get into all the aspects of the radio, just do want to show you some of the receivers they sent along. And I'm not sure if this is everything, but here are the 2.4 gigahertz receivers, and this is the one with the antenna, or this is the one with the bigger antenna, and it looks like a pretty much standard size, kind of like a Beta FPV. It just comes with this pre-soldered on connector, which will fit a lot of their bind and flies, and has a UFL connector on this side. Pretty standard. That's the 2.4 gigahertz, and this is the same one with the SMD, or the tower antenna, or ceramic antenna, as it's often referred to. Heat shrink already on here, and then these wires already connected, and then you just have to plug it into, if you have an iFlight drone with the corresponding plug, you just plug it in and you're off and running. So that's kind of nice. So they should come like this. And then this is the 900 megahertz receiver, and it comes with the shortened antenna. Again, that's probably going to affect range. This is the way it was sent. And again, UFL connector, heat shrink on there, and the same 4-pin connector pre-soldered on, but essentially it looks the same as the other ones. So those are the three they sent along. This is the 900 megahertz transmitter module. The 2.4 gigahertz one, which is already in my radio, looks pretty much the same as this. I already took it out and looked at it. Updating is done via Wi-Fi or via USB-C, and you do have to open it up to update via USB-C if you happen to use this. But if Wi-Fi doesn't work, or if you brick the Wi-Fi update, you can't open up the radio, pop this out, and update via the USB-C ports. There's no EdgeTX pass-through flashing on the Commando 8 like there is on the Zorro. And then you have the fan here, so that's the same. There are some micro-FL connectors there for the antennas that are in the radio. I'll show you that in a second. Now, if you want to swap out the module for this is basically a nano bay module for external modules, you can do that. So you pop this one out, and then you put this one in, and there's a plug for that goes in there. And then that essentially removes whatever module you're using. So while this is a part of the architecture discussion, so while this looks like it's an internal module to the radio and to the EdgeTX firmware, it appears as an external module. So when you remove this module, you're actually removing an external module. And then so when you swap this in for this nano bay and put that in for your nano modules, you can use a different external nano module like a Crossfire or some other one. And then also regarding the architecture of this, so this radio comes in 4 versions, and what I have is version 3. And so basically version 1 and 2 are either you get the Express LRS 2.4 gigahertz, I think that's the version 1. The Express LRS 900 megahertz is version 2. And then the one here you're looking at, version 3, is the base, what they call it the base, which is on the inside you have a CC2400 module for FreeSky D8, D16, and that acts as an internal module. And then the external module, in my case, is this, which is the Express LRS 2.4 gigahertz. And then the 4th version is the internal CC2500 module plus the 900 megahertz module. So yeah, just a little bit different. And so, you know, you may think, oh, this should be an internal module, but the way they set this up here is if you want to have one radio that does FreeSky D8, D16 plus Express LRS, and it's all enclosed in one, you know, chassis, no module swapping, then this is the radio you want to get, because it's all kind of enclosed. And some people were kind of wanting that, like, oh, why can't I have like a multi-module and also Express LRS at the same time? You can do it via this hardware hack that they're doing here, this sort of the way that they designed the radio. But this software is all separate. So that's why you can't have both being an internal module. So like what I think what people are actually looking for is one huge internal module that has all four of the multi-modules plus Express LRS all in one, like a 5-in-1 instead of a 4-in-1, which is still not possible because the two projects have not merged, and as far as I know, that's never going to happen. So this is the closest thing you can get. It's kind of like a workaround, and this is what they did. Anyway, so let's talk about the radio itself here. You got this little small screen. It's about the same size as the ones on the Jumper T-Lite. Obviously much smaller than the one that's on the Zorro. I think it's around 2 inches. You have a power button here on the bottom, micro SD card slot, USB-C for joystick stimulator, and also for charging. And this does charge at does have quick charging capabilities at up to 20 watts. So if you have a USB-C quick charge or power delivery, you can charge up the internal batteries up to 20 watts. There's two 18650 batteries in the handles here, both 200 milliamp hours in parallel, so you get 4,000 milliamp hours total. And which is nice because, you know, a lot of people complain about the Zorro not having enough battery life. You should have plenty in this radio, more than enough. I've actually been using it for a while, and I haven't even charged it up yet because it's got so much battery power or battery capacity in this one. So here on the top, you have their dual band antenna, and it rotates like you do with the Tango 2. And you can set the radio down like so, folds down. You have regular latching switches here in the corners instead of what Jumper did. So this is pretty much exactly what the Tango 2 is like, and then you have 3 position switches here, and they almost feel exactly the same as the Tango 2 switches. So it's basically like an Express LRS version of a Tango 2. These gimbals are these little sticks, they pop out, and they're actually not installed in the radio. To when you collapse everything down, you can put it into a small space. As you can see, I think this is an M2 screw hole that comes in 3 different sizes. The default one, I think, is the middle size, 20.8 millimeters. And then you can get another one that's a little bit bigger, 22 something, and then another one that's a little bit smaller or shorter, like 18 something. So you can choose that when you buy it on the iFlight site. If you buy it somewhere else, I think you just get the standard middle one, which is like 20.8 millimeters, which is fine. It's a good size. It's not too tall. These are smaller gimbals. They remind me a lot of the ones on the X-Lite from FreeSky, but these are way better than the ones on the X-Lite, way smoother. These are Hall sensor, just, you know, light years ahead of the ones in the X-Lite, but they remind me of those because of they're smaller gimbals with a smaller throw. And if you look at these compared to the Zorro, you're not going to be able to see it on camera, but there's more throw on the Zorro compared to this little micro gimbal here. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. It really kind of depends on the person. I personally don't mind. I actually like the smaller 3 gimbals, although people say there's less resolution. There's ways around that. I feel like I have enough resolution. It's not too tall compared to the ones on the T Pro, which are too tall for me. But it's just a smaller overall gimbal, and it's a Hall sensor gimbal. And I think that they did make some improvements over this compared to the prototype one. There's less jitter on this one. Let's see, to turn it on, you short press and then long press. Get your little lights here, and then you have a battery indicator there. You can see the voltage there, and then the fan should come on. Here, I don't know if you can hear that. It's not super loud. but you can definitely hear it, and it's on all the time, no matter what power level you're on for Express LRS. I wish it could be controllable, because obviously if you're just flying around at 100 milliwatts, you don't need the fan, and the sound is distracting, but you get used to it after a while. You have a lanyard hook here. This is metal for your neck strap. You have these two 5D buttons here. You can see here the right one is directional, and then the left one here, you can barely see the raised letters, but you have back and then system and model. So if you go to the model menu, right long press to the right brings up the model menu. Long press to the left, it goes back. And if you long press the button straight down, it brings up the system menu. And then you have your basically your traditional setup here. Edge TX Commando 8 is the firmware. 2022 421 is the date of the firmware. And it is, I'm not sure what version of Edge TX this is. It's not clear from what's on here. You can see the firmware options, Crossfire Ghost, etc. Internal multi and multi-module. So just let me show you what I was talking about earlier in terms of the architecture. If you go in here and we go into the model setup here, and you can see internal RF is off, and external RF is set to Crossfire, which is correct for Express LRS. So that is a external module to the firmware of the radio. I'm going to show you what's inside here. There's two screws to get the module off the back. Alright, so this is not going to be that easy to see, but you can see there's a basically like a pass-through. So there's a coax cable that runs to the board over here, and there's a little bit of glue that's holding that on. This coax cable runs here to this module over to this side. You can see right over here. So if you want to swap the module for the other one, you have to pull that glue off, pull this cable out, and there's a little bit of a hook there for the coax cable, so it doesn't see a little stress relief here for that. And then there's this cable here at the bottom, and then you have to plug that into the board on the inside. Now this radio is not designed to be opened up, so if you want to swap the batteries out, there's clips I think on the side of the radio that you can't open up, but you'll break those. And I heard that basically the radio will creak if you grab it on too tight when those are broken. So if you're wondering if you should open it up to look around, I would advise against it. They've designed it so that it's not serviceable, and the only thing that's swappable is the external module like this. And then they designed this like dual band antenna that'll work on 2.4 gigahertz or 900 megahertz. Now I don't really think that's a great idea personally. You know, I don't know what, I didn't open this up, so I don't know exactly what the antenna is in here. I believe it's the full length. There might be two in here. I'm not 100% sure, but it's one antenna that's going to be used for both bands, hence the name dual band antenna. If you get the single band antenna, I believe it's smaller, but it's the same plastic, where they just have a smaller antenna inside. So yeah, it's I haven't tested that either. And I haven't swapped the other module in either, because I don't really fly 900 megahertz and I have no plans on testing that. But if you're dying to know, let me know in the comments below. Maybe if there's enough interest, I might consider looking into that. But that's, you know, this is basically how the radio is. And I am not 100% like convinced this is the way to go. I think it's okay. It's going to be great for some people. It's not going to be for me. So for me, the thing that's basically a deal breaker for me is the fact that it doesn't have a 4-in-1 internal multi-module. If it had that, I think that I could use this as my daily driver, because I do use the 4-in-1 multi-module quite a bit in the Zorro that I was flying on a daily basis, which I'm not anymore. I'm not going to explain that in this video. You'll have to wait for that video to come out on the AG01 gimbals to find out why I don't fly that radio anymore. But yeah, a little teaser. I don't fly that radio anymore because I broke it, basically. We can find out, if you want to find out the reason why that happened, you know, tune in for that video later. Anyway, I digress. So if this one had, and instead of a CC2500, but it offered a 4-in-1 full 4-in-1 module where I could use that, and Express LRS, basically internal, but it's actually external. That I think would be great for me, and I would probably use this on a daily basis. The gimbals are fine for me, the screen's fine for me, the ergonomics are fine for me. I like the buttons and the switches, no problem. Navigation on these joysticks is totally fine. Battery life is fine. Overall, it's good. It's just that it doesn't have the multi-module. And then if I want to use a multi-module, then I have to swap out this, and then I don't have Express LRS. So then I have to swap modules, which is kind of pointless. I might as well go back to my T-Lite at that point. And the other thing that I don't like is the fan noise. I wish it was controllable. It should be. I mean, it should be controllable by software. But I think that the way that they've done their implementation here, it's not controllable by the Express LRS software, which I think it should be, but it isn't. So it's just on all the time. It's not super loud, but it's like it's using a battery when you don't need to be using battery if you're on lower power, if you're not flying far away. And the noise does, for me, I find it to be distracting. But yeah, and then it has like this kind of weird setup where even though you can update the firmware via Wi-Fi, if that bricks it, then you have to open it up to get to the USB-C port. And then there's no HTX pass-through flashing, which is implemented on the Zorro. So yeah, that's another downside for me. But other than those things, the radio's fine. Great battery life, good gimbals. It's very usable. If you don't need a 4-in-1 module and you just need, like, say, FreeSky, D8, D16, and Express LRS, this is going to be perfect for you, assuming you like the gimbals. And like that's the thing with all these radios is every radio just feels a little bit different. They have like these little quirks, like for example, this one's the Radio Master Zorro is a little bit on the heavier side compared to the Commando 8. Ergonomics are a little bit different. So, I always going to get this question, which one's the best? Well, which one's the best for you? I have no idea. You're going to have to sort of test them out to kind of see what you're looking for. And like you can watch all these videos and kind of gauge an idea of like what you might want to try out. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you're going to either love it or you're going to hate it. And every radio has a different feel in the hand. It's hard to describe. I'm not particularly that picky about the radios, but I am like somewhat sensitive to the ergonomics, because if you use the radio a lot, which I do, then sometimes your hands tend to hurt if the ergonomics aren't good, or if the radio is too heavy, for example. Oh, by the way, this is the Light Radio 3 from Beta FPV. I should be getting a working one eventually, and I'll have a video on that one later. So I can't give you my review on that one because that one's broken. It won't turn on anymore. So yeah, anyway, back to this guy. So the final version on this one is, it's a good radio overall. I'm not going to be using it as my daily driver, mainly because it doesn't have a 4-in-1 module. The other things, are kind of like quirky in terms of the architecture and the way the software is updated. Not a huge deal for me, not deal breakers, but that, and then the not having the 4-in-1 module plus the fan noise are the two things that bother me the most about this radio. Otherwise, I like the radio overall. Okay, so hopefully that's been helpful for you. Let me know down in the comments below if you want to see anything else about this radio. If you have any specific questions, do be specific in your question, because I get a lot of the sort of open-ended, vague questions, and I don't have a lot of time to answer those kind of questions, so I'll just kind of skip those. But if it's kind of if it's more specific to the point and I can kind of answer shortly, then I'll probably answer the question. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Talk to you guys later.